Hi, I wanted to share an approach on how we might use Delphix to start to mask or start to profile and mask an application that we may not know too much about. Now, normally with a masking job, we would engage the security and the subject matter experts around the application to try and understand exactly what we want to mask and how we want to mask it. However, Delphix provides an out-of-the-box profiler which allows you to discover sensitive data. Now, that profiler needs to be tuned in order to locate the data for your particular application. But out of the box, the profiler should work reasonably well to allow you to discover data that's sensitive. And obviously with Delphix, you can either use the profiler to automatically discover the data, but if you know exactly what tables and columns that you need to mask, then you can also just manually input those values. Now, the Delphix inventory that gets created can be exported and imported back in. So you can actually manipulate that inventory in order to speed up the process of creating the algorithms or assigning the algorithms that you need for a particular profile. Because obviously some very large applications have a large number of schemas, a large number of tables within those schemas, and obviously lots of columns as well. So really what we want to try and do is to automate as much as we can and get as far as we can in an automated way before we have to engage the users to just check the output. So what we've got here is an application. Now this is a SuiteCRM application. It's in our standard demo environment and it runs on a SQL Server database. And obviously within this, we've got contacts, opportunities, leads. So we've got lots of information in here, but obviously that's held within a database. We don't necessarily, whilst we might be a subject matter expert on the application and we know where we can see sensitive data, we may not have the same level of understanding of the actual database itself, and that's where the sensitive data discovery comes in. Okay, so this application is pointing at a virtual database. That virtual database, we can log in to the Delphix virtualization tool, the self-service tool, and we can back up that database before we start to do any masking. So let's do that. So I can log on as the SuiteCRM Delphix user. And I'll get presented the self-service interface. So I've got a couple of self-service containers that I can look at. So we're going to operate on the dev database. And this is our self-service tool. I can click here and then I can bookmark or back up this database. And this is our pre-mask dev suite CRM. Let's create that there. So all this is doing is backing up the virtual database that SuiteCRM application is running on. And that'll take a couple of minutes to run. And we can actually go back out, come out of here and log into the admin tool to see the admin interface. See that, you should be able to see that bookmarking process taking place in the action. So there it is. We're creating a bookmark, and that's already completed. Okay, so just going to the data sets here so that you can see this SuiteCRM is the database that we are operating on, and I've just created a bookmark or snapshot for that database. So now we've got this SuiteCRM application, and if I look at the accounts pane, I can see a number of accounts and I can see some details in there. Interestingly, on this application, I've got the ability to display additional types. So like I said, you may be an application expert, but you may not see all of these hidden entries, columns, items that exist in the database there, and they may not be presented to the application, but they will certainly have sensitive data in, and that sensitive data resides in the database itself. So let's get out of here. Right, so now let's log on to the Delphix compliance engine. We'll log in as the admin user. Now, I'm going to assume that we already know a little bit about how Delphix works, and we've created an environment for the SuiteCRM. And so that environment is a dev masking environment. And what we want to do in this environment is to look at creating a rule set, a particular rule set. Now, I've already created some rule sets, but we're going to rebuild those rule sets that will create an inventory. So the first thing that we might do is create a connector to that dev database. So I've already got the connector to the SuiteCRM dev database. And if you look in here, you can see, it's connecting to this host on this port and connecting to that virtual dev database. So I'm going to cancel out of there. The rule set is all around creating or adding the tables that we want to profile or mask. Okay, so if I create a rule set for that database connecting to the dev CRM database, click continue. This is a full suite, let's see, SuiteCRM full set. Okay, and the connector is that SuiteCRM dev, and click next. And now it allows us to add tables. So when we're doing profiling, we can add all of the tables, and this will be all of the tables in the database, and we look for sensitive values within those tables. Now, it may be you only want a specific set of tables. Maybe your governance office has told you exactly what tables are sensitive, and you could come through here and select those tables, and we can filter on the tables, but still, there's several hundred tables in this database, and so that's potentially an arduous task. But what we could do is select all of the tables, 220 tables in this database, and we can save that and then click next. Now, what that's doing, you can see the hourglass here, that's creating this full rule set containing all of the tables. And if I click on that, that will go in and show me the list of tables and the columns within those tables. Okay, so that's a full inventory, and I can actually go into here and I can export that inventory. So let's export the rule set. We give it a name. So this is SuiteCRM full rule set CSV file. We can export that. And here you can see the environment that we're working in on, the rule set that we've defined. This is the list of the tables that we've got in that inventory. This details whether we've got index fields or key fields or foreign key indexes. And then this is the actual column name itself. So we've got, within accounts, we've got a whole list of columns, and we list the data types that we've got. And then within here, we can, when we run the profiler, it will define a set of algorithms against sensitive data. Now, one of the things we can do, so if we go back into the application itself, come into here, when you've got these values, these columns, you can come in here and you can assign an algorithm specifically to that. So, there's a shipping address here. I could come into here. Now, what you can see is this is automatic updates. And what this says is when I run a profiler, it's going to automatically discover sensitive data and assign an algorithm. Now, I can overwrite that. So if I remove that, so now this is going to be manual or user updated. And if I save that now, what that will mean is for that particular column, when we run the profiler, it's going to ignore. So it's not going to assign an algorithm to that column. Now I can go through here and remove all of the automatically assigned statuses for all of these actual columns. But I'm going to go back into here and put that automated action in and save it there. There is a quicker way of doing that, right? So if I want to ignore a set of values, so let's say I know that my data governance team has given me a set of tables that I need to ignore. And in the case, what I'm going to do here is look at the SuiteCRM system. And what I want to do is discover whether any of those tables are actually empty. So whether they've got no rows at all. And if I do that, then I can go into that inventory and I can update the inventory to say ignore any columns in tables that have no entries. So I've got to work out a way of doing that, right? So what I can do is come into here and I can go into create a list of tables that I know don't have any entries in. So in order to do that, I'm going to run this script here to create a temporary table. And then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to select from the sys schemas the set of tables and create the table row counts table, which will have the schema name, the table name, and what the row count is for those particular tables. So I'm going to run this script now. And so having run that script, I should now be able to select those tables in this database that have more than 0 rows, so 1 or more rows. So if I run that job there, what that's given me is the list of tables that actually have values in. Okay, so come in here and grab those values. And I can add a value entry in here. Okay, so this now gives me a list of values or list of all of these table names that actually have more than 0 rows within. Now, what I want to do in here, so if I come into here, what I can do is change this method of discovery method from auto to user. And if I do that, then the profiler is actually going to ignore this table and or the column within this table. But actually, it would take me a long time to go through those several thousand columns. So what I need to do, I need to get some help here, and I'm going to use some Excel commands here in order to compare these values or these table names here against the table names I've got there. So I did that earlier, or I used actually ChatGPT to give me an Excel function that will allow me to update this method here, this ID method here. So what I can do in here is update this value by using a function. So I'm going to say if this table name here, so it's going to be C2 matches those values, and then we can actually put that in there. So we say if this table name matches one of the table names there, so we are going to want to use the auto, but if it's not there, then we are going to set it to user. And so that means we won't profile that value. So let's just click on that. So that's going to be auto because we found it. And then what we want to do is copy that and then go to the bottom paste those values in there. So now where the table doesn't exist, so account audit doesn't exist, then we're going to set that to a user value. And so what I can do with this is create a copy and put that into a new book and click OK. And so this Suite CRM form. That's completed now, so we can go into the accounts audit and we can look at one of the values in here, and you can see that that is now not enabled for automatic updates. So we've updated the inventory, if you like, or the rule set. So now what we want to do is we want to run a profile against this inventory. Okay, so we would need to create a profile and a profiler job. But before we do that, let's look at settings. And look at the profile sets that we've got. So we've got a standard out of the box profile set, which is ASDD standard. We can go in there and we can actually duplicate that. So let's duplicate it. And this is the ASDD profiler. And we'll say this is demo 1 copy. So let's save that. Now, one of the things that we also know, so if we get this ASDD profiler demo 1, we can go in and edit that. Okay, so let's click on the edit. And that will give us an option to add or remove these classifiers. Do that so we can see post code regex and then telephone phone number regex and US passport regex. There we are. Very good. So let's now save this. So we've modified our demo 1 profiler. And what we can do now, we can go in and we can actually create a profile based on this profiler. Let's go back to the environment, look at our SuiteCRM environment, and now we can create a profiling job, which is going to be a SuiteCRM form. We're going to use the rule set that we just created, which was the full rule set, and the profile set that we created was this demo 1. Okay, let's save that profile job. So now we've created a profile job. So let's go back in and just look at the environments, the masking, and the rule sets, which gives us the inventory, and this was the rule set. And within here, you can look at all of these, and we've got none of the columns have got algorithms associated with them. Okay, so what we can do, we can go in here and run the full profiler. So let's try and do that. Back to the environments, masking environment, go to the jobs, and now we can actually run this profile job. Click on the job name, and you can see that it's preparing and it's executing. And now we're saying that the profiler is complete, and we've successfully profiled to those 220 tables. So what we can do here now is look at this rule set. And as you can see, we've started to create algorithms and associated those with the values. There's quite a number of values in there, and we can actually review these values and see whether actually it makes sense that we are masking in the right way of it. Now, if we go in and look at the data, come into here, and let's pick on the accounts table. Okay, so you can see the accounts table here. We start to look at the data. So we've got some of the data in here. So, you know, there's a company name there, which, you know, could be arguably be sensitive. We've got a website URL here, which doesn't appear to have been discovered. And we've got some addresses there as well. So there does appear to be a postcode in there. So we might want to look at that and modify some of these algorithms. But this tool, so we found the city. There's going to be a city lookup. We found the address. That looks okay. So this name value is actually a company name, which is quite interesting. So we may want to add a profile for company name there. We may also want to mask the website, because obviously if we're masking the company name but we still got their website address in there, then really we need to probably mask that. So there's a couple of things that haven't been found. So what we can do is we can now create some classifiers that will help and add them to this profiler so that we can improve on the false negatives, because we're saying the website is a false negative and then perhaps the company name is a false negative as well. So let's go and look in settings and look at the classifiers that we've got. And we go into here. So there should be a URL classifier. So we do have some classifiers, but it's looking at the path or the web address. And therefore, we ought to take a look at that. So here we've got web address. Now, if you look at our code, it's kind of got website in there, but let's have a view of this. So this should have picked it up. So we have got website in here. So let's just see if this web URL path is actually being used within our profiler. So let's have a look at the profile set. Edit that. We're looking for web. Okay, so we're not using that profiler. So let's add that web URL path. Save that. So if we needed a regular expression, so we can look at here, right? So we can take that value here. So one of the ways to test regular expressions is this through this regex101.com. So I can go in here, put that value in here, and we know. Yeah, we can see that website will get discovered. There's a little bit of a panic there because I obviously missed the S on. And so that regular expression is going to discover website. Go back into the tool here. Okay, so we should be able to now find that web address and we can go back into our environments, look at this. Rule set. And then the other one I wanted to look at was this name here. So let's have a look at that name. So if we look at the values that we've got in name by looking at this here, the name is actually the company name. So let's go back into the settings for classifiers and look at the company. And there we can look in here. Now, if you look at this, this is actually looking for business values, right? So it's looking for limited companies, corporations, groups, etc. So it looks like it should find businesses within that company name. So let me copy that. Stick it into the regex here. And then look for BBC Limited. Okay. And then if we go back into the tool here, OTC Holdings. So let's see if it will discover OTC Holdings using that regular expression. So OTC Holdings. So it isn't actually finding that. So I could modify this and just add another value in here and put holdings. Okay, and then take that value, copy it out of there, go in the match string, add, and then go in there. Delete that one. Save. And then we need to check in the profile set that we have that company name in there. So let's have a look. Company. No, so let's check that and save that. So now we can go in and run that profiler again. Jobs. Run the profiler. So we've run that job, so we can go back into the SuiteCRM. We can look at the rule sets. So looking at, so now we can see the name has become the company name. And actually, I've got a Saudi secure lookup that I created for that as well. What we could do is put a filter on here where the name is non-blank. And that would give us a list of all of the columns that have been discovered and had an algorithm assigned. Okay. Now what we can do is go into the environments and we can run a masking job or create a masking job. So let's go into the dev masking. We look at the jobs here and now we can create a masking job. Now the masking job is going to be SuiteCRM full mask. I'm going to do in-place masking. If we set multi-tenant there, then that will allow us to, as we run the masking job, it will allow us to choose what connector to use. But we know we're only going to use one connector. I don't want to connect to the dev database. But obviously, if you were going to mask multiple different databases with the same schemas, then by checking this, you are allowed to take that one job and run it many times against different databases. And then we're going to select the rule set. So it will be the rule set that we created, which is the SuiteCRM full rule set. And then we can click next. Now, if we look at the accounts, we can see the values we got here, and or we can look at the actual table itself and look at all the values that we've got. So if we come down here, you see that first website is the SuiteCRM. So let's go back into the job, and now we can run the action of running that job. And when we click on the job name, you'll see that we have a progress status report. We can see the execution summary, job number 47, and we're preparing that particular specific masking job. As we go through those processes, each of those steps that we're going through to do the masking will be checked. So as we can see, a lot of the tables have been masked, but we do appear to have an error on one of those tables. So let's look at that failure. So it's looking at first name lookup. There's a primary key constraint on that table here, right? So let's back out of there. So that fields metadata table has a key constraint on it. So we're going to have to disable that key constraint. So if we go back into so the problem is that we've masked some of the fields, but we've got one table that hasn't been masked. So we're going to have to restore that database, which is quite straightforward because we can come in here and we can log into the self-service utility. SuiteCRM login. And before we do that, let's look at the SuiteCRM and just refresh this, and we can see that a lot of those values have been masked, right? However, we want to restore the old values and then run the masking again. So we can actually click on that bookmark we created, which was the pre-mask bookmark, and then we can restore the database back to that bookmark point in time. So that's going to bring that database down and restore it to its original value, to that bookmarked value. So that's one of the nice things about having Delphix. We can, if any one of those jobs errors, then we can simply restore it and then run the job again. Now, what we're going to have to do is in that masking job, and we can go back to that masking job here, we are going to need to edit, and we're going to need to disable constraints indexes. Next, save. Now what that will do, it will disable the constraints, drop the indexes, and then it will recreate the indexes and enable the constraints again once the job has finished. But before we can do that, we need to make sure that this database gets restored. And again, we're in the self-service user GUI, but we can log out of there, log in as admin. No, we're just rolling back and recovering that database. Okay, that's completed. So now we can come back into here. Oh. Now we're back to where we were before. So also look in here and refresh this. Reconnect. Oh, data. And we got back to the old values, which is good. So now we can come back into here and run that masking job. And hopefully this time, oops, it will succeed.